In the beginning, there was only ocean. Dark, deep, endless. Just take a second to imagine that. No land at all, no shores, no islands, just water stretching out in every single direction, right to the horizon. Complete, absolute silence and pitch darkness down on the deep ocean floor. And then, from the very deepest places of the earth, something stirs. Something incredibly ancient, unstoppable, and relentlessly powerful. It's literally the planet itself deciding to make something completely new. Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today because, well, we're going to look at one of the most epic, awe-inspiring life cycles on our entire planet. We are talking about the raw birth, the flourishing life, and the eventual, strangely beautiful, death of volcanic islands. You know every tropical paradise you've ever dreamed of visiting? Yeah, it began in total freezing darkness. And today, we're going to trace exactly how a lost world is born from the deep. All right, let's get into part one, Born from the Deep. Let's start with the violent, relentless birth of an island. Now, this is not a gentle process. It begins with fire. Well, magma, really, rising straight from the core of the Earth. It's the planet's mantle literally deciding to push upward. And to get there, this magma has to travel 11 kilometers. 11 kilometers straight up through the ocean floor and all that dark, freezing water just to reach the surface. It's this completely unstoppable force of geology, just building layer by layer, century after century, until it finally breaks out into the open air.
Okay, let's dive into this. Part 2, the science of hotspots. Now, I know it kind of feels like magic, but it's totally grounded in some fascinating hard science. It all starts with what's called a hotspot. This is basically a point beneath the ocean where the Earth's superheated mantle literally melts the crust right above it. It creates this massive plume of magma that just punches straight through the seafloor. The mechanics here are just relentless. First, the mantle melts the crust, then that magma rises and pours right out into the freezing ocean water, where it instantly cools and hardens into rock. Step 3, more magma comes, piling on top of the old rock, building upward slowly and steadily for millions of years. And finally, that massive pile of rock breaks the surface. Bam, an island just appears.
But here's the crazy part. This isn't just ancient history. The big island of Hawaii, which is the youngest in its chain, is actually being built right now. Like, as you're listening to this explainer, lava is actively pouring into the Pacific Ocean on the southeastern shore of Hawaii, and the island is physically expanding. Brand new land is being made today. How cool is that? That brings us to part 3, Surtsey, a blank canvas. We don't even have to just imagine what this looks like, because humanity has actually witnessed it. Picture this. It's November 1963. A fishing crew sailing south of Iceland notices smoke rising from the water way out on the horizon. They actually thought it was another ship on fire and sailed over to help. But as they got closer, they realized, no way, it wasn't a ship at all. It was the ocean itself, literally erupting in these massive columns of steam and ash and lava. Over the next 4 years, an unbelievable 2.5 square kilometers of brand new rock rose straight up from the sea, standing 170 meters above the ocean surface. Scientists named it Surtsey, after the Norse god of fire. It was brand new rock, brand new soil that had literally never existed before in the history of the Earth. Now, this presented scientists with one of the most extraordinary experiments ever, a completely blank page. Surtsey was entirely lifeless. No soil, no plants, no animals. Just bare, black, volcanic rock. Which leads us to a pretty massive question. How does life begin in a place with absolutely nothing? The answer? Tiny passengers hitching a ride to the newest land on Earth. You see, seabirds will land on the bare rock just to rest during long ocean journeys. And without even meaning to, they bring gifts. Seeds caught in their feathers, and bacteria in their droppings. It's this astonishingly simple, almost totally accidental beginning. And this brilliantly illustrates just how fast life finds a way. The eruption ends in 1963, right? Just 1 year later, a single blade of grass is found growing from a tiny crack in the rock. No soil, no shelter. Fast forward a decade, and mosses and lichens are completely covering the rocks. Seabirds start nesting there, which fertilizes the newly forming soil. Insects follow, then earthworms, then small mammals. It's literally an entire ecosystem building itself from absolutely nothing. Let's zoom out a bit for part 4, evolution in isolation. Now that we know how life actually arrives,
What happens when these newly seeded islands mature over thousands of years, completely isolated by deep ocean? Because they rise up all alone, cut off from the rest of the world, life is forced to evolve its own unique answers. In the Galapagos, where Charles Darwin first understood evolution, we get the giant tortoise. In Hawaii, the beautifully adapted honeycreeper bird. In Madagascar, the incredibly diverse lemurs. These are completely unique life forms that exist absolutely nowhere else on Earth, all products of an island born from the deep and left totally alone. To really grasp the timeline of this evolution, we have to look at the Hawaiian chain from above. It stretches an unbelievable 2,400 kilometers across the Pacific Plate. That's a massive distance. This isn't just a group of islands. It's a literal, physical timeline of geological history carved right into the ocean floor. The contrast here is just staggering. The oldest islands, up to the northwest, they're deeply eroded, low to the water, covered in this lush green jungle, and completely softened by millions of years of wind and rain. But travel southeast to the youngest islands, and they are raw, still growing, and literally on fire. It perfectly demonstrates the passage of millions of years playing out across a single island chain. Which brings us to our final chapter. Part 5, The Inevitable Return. As absolutely incredible as these lost worlds are, they don't last forever. Let's slow down for a second to consider the poetic and honestly kind of tragic, inevitable return of these islands back to the deep. The very forces that built the island, they eventually reclaim it. First, the Pacific Plate moves slowly northwest. This physically carries the island away from the hotspot, cutting it off from the fire that built it. Without new lava to rebuild the land, the ocean begins its patient work, as waves and rain erode the rock. And finally, over millions of years, the island slowly sinks right back into the ocean that bore it. But as they sink, something really beautiful happens. Coral reefs grow around the edges, building upward at the exact same rate the island sinks downward. This creates an atoll, a ring of coral around a lagoon right where an island used to be. I love this part. I like to think of them as the gorgeous, living ghosts of sunken islands. They're still alive, still beautiful, but changed forever. But hey, the story doesn't end in the dark. Let's bring the energy back up, because the Earth is never truly finished. Right now, as we speak, beneath the ocean southeast of Hawaii's Big Island, a brand new volcano called Lōʻihi is already rising. It is currently patiently building itself about 1 kilometer below the ocean surface. In tens of thousands of years, it's going to break the surface. The next lost world is already being born, right beneath our feet. It's this relentless, beautiful cycle of birth, life, and return. And it leaves us with one final, absolutely awe-inspiring question to consider. When Lōʻihi finally breaks the surface and cools into bare black rock, what new seeds, what wandering birds, and what entirely new forms of life are going to find their home on the next lost world? Thank you so much for exploring the incredible story of these islands with me. Keep wondering, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.